Hey Zen Nation, Shama here. On today's show, I sit down with Dan Schawbel, author of Promote Yourself, and we discuss marketing and millennials. Welcome to Shama TV, the only channel on YouTube completely dedicated to marketing and the world around it. Recently, I met up with good friend and colleague Dan Schawbel, who is an expert on millennials and recent author of Promote Yourself. If you follow me online, you know I talk a lot about Gen Y, also known as millennials, and Dan also had a lot to say about this topic. So, my team and I headed over there last week at the Hilton Anatole here in Dallas, and here's that interview for you today. Hey Dan, thanks so much for doing this.
Always a pleasure to see you, Shama.
I would love to hear from you since you are the millennial master, and I've read your books. I mean, so many companies turn to you when they're trying to figure out cracking the millennial code, right? Let's talk about marketing to millennials. What are companies doing wrong?
Well, most companies need to factor in the fact that millennials want companies to make a difference in society and give back to the community and show them exactly how they're doing it. So actually, at this conference I'm at with all these CEOs today, they're talking about how their companies need to better communicate what they're doing for their local communities and giving back and doing philanthropy and making donations. And a lot of them are not doing that, and that's what gets millennials excited and gets them more engaged in wanting to buy from them or work with them. And that's what's really interesting about marketing these days with technology is that millennial consumers and millennial employees is kind of coming together. So if a company gives you a bad recruiting process and doesn't respond to your resume submission, then you're less likely to buy from them and you're more likely to buy from their competitors. And so it's this really interesting situation where if you don't treat your employees right, if you don't treat your applicants right, you're going to actually lose business. There's this calculated ROI against it.
So note to self, make sure that our HR department responds to every millennial resume that comes in.
Exactly, and millennials want personalization. They want things custom. It's like that's why Amazon's so successful is because if I go on there and I buy your book, I'm going to see other books like it and potentially buy those too because that's what I'm interested in. It's learn my priorities and what my focuses are.
Do you think companies should just accept the fact that, hey, millennials, this is just their outlook and we should roll with that? Because the other question is, companies say, why should we invest in millennials in really recruiting them and keeping them if we know they're going to turn around and leave in less than a year or 2 years?
Yeah, so the number one thing millennials want is for companies to invest in their careers, which is interesting because if they don't invest in their careers, then millennials look outside the walls. They say, what other companies are offering a better work situation for me where I can learn, I can develop, I can be around experts. They want to work with experts in their field where they can learn and develop. And millennials, and we're like this too, we believe in continuous learning. So it's not just about learning one skill, it's about mastering that skill, going to the next skill. And that's actually how you manipulate and be successful in this economy because the world is constantly changing, and if you can't adapt to change and learn the new skills and figure out what's going to be more important in 2, 4, 5 years, then you're going to be irrelevant, and that's what a lot of people are struggling with right now.
So you're saying companies should invest, but do it knowingly, know that this is kind of the mindset of the millennials, and so if you want to get them, then this is sort of how you have to look at it. What if for companies looking to market to millennials, do you see any companies doing a really good job where you're like, marketing, thumbs up?
I would say Tom's Shoes is a great example, right? The idea of one for one, Warby Parker, one for one.
Cause-driven, what you were talking about.
Yeah, but it's not even just that. It's showing a video of, look at these people in Africa who are wearing these shoes, and they're wearing it because you bought a pair.
Right? So it's that storytelling aspect.
And that's with everything in marketing.
Making millennials feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So if there was one tip that you could give companies looking to market to millennials, like just one takeaway, what would it be?
I would say be transparent. I think this really comes up again and again. So like what you were saying earlier, the number one trait that millennials want leaders to have, and even Gen Z, so 16 years old to 33-year-olds, they want people who are transparent and honest.
Let's talk about the flip side, right, Dan? Because at the same token, I know there's a lot of talented millennials out there, and this show is all about marketing, whether yourself, your company, your business, your ideas. What's a good idea for a millennial looking to market themselves, whether it's to try to get a job or move up in their company? Like, what would be your advice to them?
So from the job perspective, the number one thing they have to think about is to always be employed. Even if you don't have a full-time job, you always have to be doing something. Always. And here's why. Is because in today's world, if you're an active job seeker, every year it gets harder to get a job because you're competing against passive job seekers who are perceived as more valuable, boomerang employees who worked for a company, left and came back and they get higher preference, internal hires, people who already work for the company who can move around. So if you're not doing anything, you're seen as so less valuable. Why would they want to hire you? So always be doing something, whether it's starting a blog, doing a video series, whether it's doing freelancing on Upwork or any other of those freelancing sites, whether it's starting a small business or selling jewelry on Etsy. Do something. If you're not doing anything and you have resume gaps, you're in major trouble in this economy. From an employee perspective, it's all about standing out.
I always preach the philosophy that you should say yes to everything when you were a millennial and starting out. Like, someone wants you to get a coffee? Yes. You know, someone says, hey, can you do this? Yes. Like, be the first to volunteer, right? Like, it blows my mind when I see millennials who are given an opportunity and they don't jump on that. Like, it's so frustrating, I think, to me, just to see that.
I think they're above that. Say yes now in order to get the privilege to say no when you're older.
Thanks so much, Dan. It's always such a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely, Shama. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll see you next Monday. Until then, remember to market like a Zen master.